Welcome along, or welcome back if you tuned in earlier on to Snetterton for our fourth and final race of what's been a busy old weekend for the 2023 Focus Cup Championship. We saw two good races yesterday where Lewis Clark and Ian Mitchell claimed their first wins of the season, but in the race earlier on today, Jonathan Baker claimed the win, which means that he is the first driver to have claimed two wins so far this year, because we had 6 different winners out of the first 6 races of the championship season. And he claimed the win in round number 7. So this is round number 8. It's another 15-minute race, and the grid is formed based on the finishing positions from the race earlier on today, albeit they are reversed in batches of 6. So if you win the race, you go to 6th. If you finish 7th in the race, you go to 12th. And each one of those top 6s are all spun around, if that makes sense. So let's guide you through this grid then and the way that they line up. Pole position will go the way of the man that finished 6th earlier on. That is Ian Mitchell, and alongside him it will be Ian Graham. So the two Ians line up on the front row of the grid. Row 2 of the grid, Richard Avis and Lewis Clark, the championship leader, that sits there on the outside of the second row. The third row of the grid, Mark McCann, who had his best result in his first podium of the season, sits there on row number 3, and alongside is the winner from earlier on today, now 2 times a winner this season, Jonathan Baker. And then on row number 4, that's where we see Claire Avis and Simon Walton. The 5th row of the grid, the inside of the 5th row of the grid, is Simon Waugh, who was tipped into a spin earlier on and had to recover. That was why he starts a little bit lower down the order, so I'd watch out for him. He's got Greg Saunders for company, and it's number 7, Andrew Weiss, that lines up again alongside Simon Watts on what is the 6th row of the grid. And the 7th and final row of the grid sees Sarah Hall line up alongside Abby Walton. And that's the way that they start this one. We've seen some brilliant racing from them over the course of the weekend. Earlier on, we saw Mark McCann claim 2nd position. He had 3 6th places, but hadn't been on the podium at all, and straight away was up to 2nd position, and only missed out on the win by 0.3 of a second. In fact, the race earlier on today, if you didn't tune in, the top 3 were separated by 0.9 of a second at the end of 7 laps of racing, or 15 minutes. So we should be able to, if we go green all of the way, be able to squeeze out a further 7 laps of this one. And so far this weekend, I don't want to put the commentator's curse on it, but everything has gone to plan. We have had every car finish every race so far, and they've all been on the lead lap as well. So it largely has gone to plan for everybody. And that's a good thing about the Focus Cup, is Simon Walton and the team work terribly hard to encourage drivers to come and join the series. It's a very affordable way of going racing. It's a fixed price for the weekend, so that includes the car with the setup and the team that prepare the car for you. It includes all of the consumables, so the fuel and the brake components and tyres and everything else as well. And it also includes testing on the Friday or testing the day before as well. So it's a one-off price for the weekend. The only extra thing you'd pick up is that if you do damage the car, of course, there are some bills to be paid with regards to that. But again, they offer you options around that, so you can offset some of the costs. Or it's not an insurance, they don't call it an insurance because they're not able to, but there's a damage programme that you can buy into, shall we say. So it is a really affordable way of going racing. All of the cars are the same. They're all absolutely identical. Ford Focus, 3-door Zetec S, 2-litre TDCi engine machines, so 248 pounds-feet of torque, 6-speed manual transmission, about 135 brake horsepower, something like that, and all running controlled tyres as well, so all on the Nankang tyre as well, which is the mandatory fitment for the Focus Cup Championship. And the other good thing is that there are spare cars, so if there is an issue with your car, or in the case of Jonathan Baker, he had an off in testing and damaged the car, then usually there's a spare car or two to be able to drop in, so that even if people have problems, we can still get them out in every race. And that's the really, really good thing that the Focus Cup do, to ensure that nobody goes home disappointed. Everybody goes home with a big old smile on their face. And it is a championship as well, so again in this race there will be 30 points for the win, 26 for second, 23rd for third, 21 for fourth, and then it diminishes by a point thereafter, so 20 for fifth and 19 for sixth, and you can guess what happens thereafter. Extra 5 points for the fastest lap as well, so there's a fair few points up for grabs. And even for qualifying, it's exactly the same amount of points for a win as you get for qualifying on pole and backwards as well, so it's 30 points if you qualify on pole for the first race of the weekend. That's the only time it counts for pole position. Because all of the rest of the races are that top 6 reversed continually all the way through, each batch of top 6 reversed. So it makes it a really interesting championship. It's certainly different as well, with the different cars and the different process that all of the cars are prepared centrally. and all of them are largely liveried in the championship partners as well, so those that either supply controlled parts or involved in some way, shape or form with supporting the championship. Each one of the cars largely carries the liveries of those companies. So the car that's on pole position, white and black and red for Ian Mitchell. It's white and blue and black for the car of Ian Graham that sits alongside, black and red and white for Richard Davis alongside the silver and blue car of Lewis Clark. And row 3 of the grid, it's white with blue and a red flash for Mark McCann, and silver with the red stripes down the centre for Jonathan Baker. 15 minutes are on the clock. The red lights are on, and as the lights go out, which they do now, Ian Mitchell does not get a bad start from pole position. Ian Graham was a little bit slower away and is in danger of losing out to Richard Davis possibly, but through the second phase he gets the car rolling nicely, and I think it might be Lewis Clark possibly that slots himself through into third place. Yeah, Richard Davis was a little bit slower away actually. Watch out for Simon Waugh in the green and the orange car. I would suspect he should make progress up through the order as everybody is safely through Ritchie's and they descend upon the Wilson hairpin for the first time. Neat and tidy, everybody being careful so that they don't bump into each other. It's a little bit tight coming off the corner as Andrew Weiss and Claire Avis almost got together. And because then Andrew Weiss had to come back off the gas, it allowed Simon Watts to begin to close in on him as well. So they thread their way through Palmer for the first time, and it is Ian Mitchell who is looking to see if he can break away a little bit in third place. Lewis Clark was weaving around behind Ian Graham, but the door wasn't really able to be prized open as they head out of Agostini for the first time. One car just dropping that little bit further back from the chasing pack. We'll pick up on whom that is at the end of this lap, but there's no doubt about who's leading. It's the Power Maxed car of Ian Mitchell that leads the way. Ian, who claimed his first win of the season in the second of the 2 races yesterday, and is looking to try and make it a double win if he can over the course of this weekend. What did happen earlier on though was that towards the end of the race his car went off the boil a little bit and he dropped down through the order. He was in second place and then ultimately finished in 6th position, so hopefully whatever caused that has been sorted, whether it either be some sort of a tyre issue or car issue, or maybe even the driver may be running out of puff. I wouldn't have thought so, because that looked very Ian Mitchell-like to drop down through the order as he did earlier. He is managing to break away though in the early stages of this one. Sideways in the background is Simon Waugh, all over the grass, and the exit of Brundle, and Nelson rejoins directly behind Richard Davis, but immediately in front of Simon Walton. So I think just about managing to avoid making contact with the man behind the championship, but so keen was Simon Waugh to get back on the tarmac. He, I don't think, lifted off and rejoined as quickly as he possibly could to try and minimise the impact of that grassy moment. Now for the lead of the race, Ian Mitchell pulling away, but it's a good fight forming now for second and for third place, because the number 27 car of Ian Graham is under pressure from Lewis Clark. Lewis Clark trying to draw himself alongside. That would be the outside line for Ritchie's corner. And as they head up towards Ritchie's, let's have a quick look. Now Ian Graham still hangs on to it. Now he needs to make sure that he gets off the corner nice and quickly, and then possibly defends the inside line, which he's immediately going to do on the run in towards the Wilson hairpin to prevent Lewis Clark from squeezing his way through. Lewis Clark, though, is trying to prise the door open. No, none of it. A little light touch between the pair of them. Jonathan Baker in the number 10 safety devices car is trying to get in on the mix as well. Now he's got the overlap on Lewis Clark and might try and squeeze his way through up towards Palmer, but they all get themselves back to being nose to tail as they turn their way in towards the left-hander at Palmer, and all of this is just allowing our race leader Ian Mitchell to gallop away in the lead of the race. Andrew Weiss has got problems, and it looks as though he is out of the race. That's the exit of the Wilson hairpin where his car has come to a halt. Hopefully that car will be moved out of harm's way entirely, if not by driver, then by marshal power potentially, because for the moment it should just be being covered by localised yellow flags. So for second place, Ian Graham doing a good job of hanging on to it. The number 27 car, he finished 5th in the race earlier on today, did Ian Graham. He was 7th in yesterday's second race. He was 9th in the first race of the weekend, so he's gradually got better as the weekend has gone on. Each result getting better and better and better. And so far this weekend, yeah, 5th is his best result of the weekend and his best result of the season. That was his first top 6 of the season so far, but he has got Lewis Clark trying to prise the door open on second place, and Lewis Clark is in danger of having to attack and defend at the same time, because he's got the silver car with the 2 red stripes down the centre, which is Jonathan Baker's car right behind. So it does look as though it is retirement for the Liqui-Moly machine of Andrew Weiss. He walks away from his stricken car. But everybody is queuing up at the moment behind Ian Graham. He's a bit of a cork in the bottle at the moment. He's not doing anything wrong. He's driving as quickly as he possibly can and making sure that he doesn't make a mistake, getting cleanly off the corners and just holding everybody up, but making it difficult for them to work their way through and past. So out of Murray's, on the gas as quickly as he can, concentrate on a good exit out of that corner, because then it doesn't put you under pressure as you head along the Senna straight. Lewis Clark looking to try and close in on the slipstream again. Jonathan Baker, followed by Mark McCann, Richard Avis, Simon Warren. This time Lewis Clark has prized open the door of the inside line for Richie's corner, but Ian Graham is still having none of it. Sweeps across the nose of Lewis Clark, who is then slower coming out of the corner, and that instantly puts him under pressure from Jonathan Baker on one side. And is Mark McCann going to make it 3 wide? Surely not going in towards the Wilson hairpin. No, they just about managed to sort it all out as they head in towards the Wilson hairpin. But it's one great big train of cars all the way back to the car that's there in 7th place, which is Simon Waugh, and Simon Walton's trying to latch himself onto the coattails of these as well. So Simon Waugh catching up with the pack behind, having set the fastest lap of the race last time through, 2 minutes 25.734. They've already completed 2 laps. Ian Graham still doing a good job of hanging on to 2nd position, but you can see that all of the time Ian Mitchell is just edging away from everybody else, and this is exactly what Ian Mitchell wants. A great big queue of cars. What is it? 2, 4, 6, 7 cars really, all fighting over 2nd position, right the way back to Simon Walton in 8th place. And because they're all busy squabbling, he's just building the advantage all of the time. It's now up to 2.9 seconds that Ian Mitchell leads the race by. And for Ian Graham, well, he wants to try and hang on to 2nd place, but look at the pressure that he's under. Again, Lewis Clark looking to try and close in on him. He is not quite going to be close enough, I don't think, by the time they get towards the bottom of the Bentley straight. So through Brundle and Nelson, it should still be Ian Graham leading the way. Further down through the order, it looks as though we might have possibly a change for position there. Now, was that Mark McCann looking to pick up a place? Yes, it was. Did he manage it? No, he didn't. He's still behind Jonathan Baker, but ahead of Richard Avis, and ever more cars are now closing in and wanting in on the fun as well. So Simon Walton was at the tail end of the queue, but Simon Watts is starting to close up. Then we've got Greg Saunders beginning to close in, and the number 71 car, which is the black and the Dayglow car of Claire Avis, isn't that far away from this huge train of cars now. So through Murray's onto the Senna straight. Again, Ian Graham concentrating on his exit coming out of the corner. But it's going to be pretty much 10 cars now queuing up for 2nd place. So there they go over the start-finish line. Ian Graham, Lewis Clark weaves around one way, weaves around the other, goes back to the inside line. Anything to try and distract Ian Graham, but he's having none of it. And this time, Ian Graham doesn't quite get turned into the corner in time. Lewis Clark is there. That compromises Ian Graham's exit speed, so he's lost 2nd place. He doesn't want to lose 3rd now, so he'll cover off the attack from behind again as they head in towards the braking area for the Wilson hairpin. And it is going to be Jonathan Baker who is now up into 3rd position, and Richard Avis is going wheel to wheel with Mark McCann, but the number 77 car of Richard Avis, the black car with the red flashes down the side, has the inside line for Palmer, so should still be able to hang on to it. But Mark McCann braves it out all the way around the outside at Palmer. That's still going to leave him on the outside line when they head up towards Agostini, but fantastic stuff it is, as ever, from the Focus Cup Championship. Real good advertisement for what is a hugely competitive championship, and it's their final race of the weekend. Everybody will be wanting to finish the weekend on a high. Now, Richard Avis is still side by side with Mark McCann. Something's got to give, because you can't go side by side through Hamilton, or can you? I'll tell you what, yes you can, which means that you're still pretty much side by side when you get towards Oggies. And Simon Waugh is going to try and make it 3 wide as he backs out of the move at the wheel of his green and orange machine. So the number 22 car just, I think, losing out there. Or did he lose out? No, he didn't. Mark McCann hung on to the place. Yep, so he did hang on to the position still. So brilliant stuff. That's just, for the moment, I think, split the pack slightly to a degree. So it's not quite 10 cars now queuing up for 2nd place, because we've got now up to 2nd place the car of Lewis Clark, and starting to pull away from Ian Graham, who still remains slightly the cork in the bottle at the moment. But a brilliant drive it has been from Ian Graham. Say 5th earlier on was his best result of the season so far. Well, if he could cap off the weekend with a podium, he'd be as pleased as punch with that. But he's got work to do. There's 5.5 minutes to do. And who has he got behind him? The most successful driver in the championship this year with 2 wins under his belt, Jonathan Baker. And Jonathan is not going to make it easy as they head round through Coreham and in towards the braking area for Murray's. He's got to attack and defend at the same time because he's got Richard Avis in the number 77 car sitting directly behind him. So 5 minutes remain, 2/3 of the race completed. Jonathan Baker now feeling the pinch because right behind him is Richard Avis, who jinks out from behind his slipstream, but the number 77 car I don't think is going to have quite enough to be able to wrestle his way through by the time they get towards Richie's corner. So no, they'll be back to nose to tail once more through the first corner. And now Richard Avis from attack turns back to defence because he's got Mark McCann sitting right behind him, and Mark of course lost the place to Richard Avis on the previous lap. So they're all still together. Ian Graham has driven a brilliant race, I've got to say. He's not really put a wheel wrong. He got picked off by Lewis Clark, who is now already 3 seconds up the road from the 3rd place number 27 car. But just look at the queue of cars that still sit behind Ian Graham. So here they come, up towards the braking area for Agostini. I think Ian Graham has got enough daylight between himself and everybody behind so as not to worry. Jonathan Baker, followed by Richard Avis, Mark McCann, then Simon Waugh weaving away in the background with the RAF-esque roundels on his car. Then you've got Simon Watts, followed by Simon Walton, I think that is, for 8th and 9th, who have just fallen a little bit further back. And we've had a change in the order with those 2 Simons as well. It's now Watts ahead of Walton in the Battle of the Simons. But Ian Mitchell now leading by 4 3/4 seconds. However, last time through, new fastest lap of the race, he was half a second quicker nearly, was Lewis Clark. It was a 2 minutes 24.585 from Lewis Clark as the fastest lap of the race. Still a little bit shy of the 2 minute 22.8 that we did earlier on today. So 3.5 minutes remaining. They're on lap number 5 at the moment. We should get 7 laps out of this one. And as they head down in towards Brundle and Nelson, it is still Ian Graham, or was Ian Graham, as sending one up the inside goes Jonathan Baker, and Ian Graham is now down into 4th position, which would still be his best result of the season so far. But guess what? More cars queuing up behind him. Richard Avis, Simon Waugh, Mark McCann and Simon Watts, and beginning to close in ever more now is Greg Saunders as well at the wheel of the number 34 car. He's gone past Simon Walton over the course of this lap. So finally Jonathan Baker in the safety devices machine prizes the door open and already starting to pull away from number 27 Ian Graham once more, who I think was a little bit slower coming out of Murray's on that occasion. So Richard Avis has got the run this time and is looking to draw himself alongside. So surely again Ian Graham will try and hug that right hand side of the circuit, the inside line, as they head up towards the right hander at Richie's corner. Has Richard Avis done enough down the straight to take the place away? Yes, he has. Another position lost for Ian Graham. So he's now down into what will be 5th position, which was where he finished earlier on today, which was still his best result of the season. But more cars queuing up behind, and I'm afraid there was contact. Simon Waugh gets into the back of Ian Graham and spins him round. Mark McCann gets compromised as he's trying to avoid what unfolded ahead of him. Well, Ian Graham, I don't think did a great deal wrong there. I think Simon Waugh just misjudged where he needed to be and got into the back of Ian Graham and spun him round. So I think everybody will continue. Light damage to all, but places lost for most, and only now does Simon Waugh get rally crossing back onto the tarmac, but he's got some front suspension damage by the look of that, so he is going to be, I'm afraid, out of the race. Yeah, definitely either a wishbone or broken track link or something there for Simon Waugh, so he is going to post his first retirement of the weekend. But our race leader is still Ian Mitchell, and the lead advantage is being whittled down. Ian Mitchell last time through set his best individual lap of the race, but that was a full second slower than the car in 2nd place. It was another new fastest lap of the race for Lewis Clark, 2 minutes 23.872 for Lewis Clark, so he is on a mission at the moment. Also on a mission after his problems down at the Wilson hairpin and compromised is Mark McCann, who has dropped outside of the top half dozen places. So here's Ian Mitchell, and there in the background is Lewis Clark. So both having already claimed wins so far this weekend. Andrew Weiss and Simon Waugh chatting away together. They've both retired with separate issues at the same corner. Jonathan Baker in third place, still fighting away to try and hang on to the podium spot. But our race leaders should be going over the start-finish line to start what will be the final lap of the race in a few moments' time. 30 minutes remain on the clock. And here is that battle for third position. Jonathan Baker under pressure from Richard Avis. As over the start-finish line goes Ian Mitchell. Lap time from him was the best lap that he's done so far, but it was still a second slower again than the chasing Lewis Clark, who is eating into the lead advantage, but he's still 2.8 seconds behind, and he's only heading on to the final lap of the race, but he's only a second quicker. So I think Ian Mitchell probably has just about enough in hand, but it's a good job it's probably just a 15-minute race. Had it have been a 20-minute race, we would probably in for an absolute grandstand finish, but it's not for want of trying as far as Lewis Clark is concerned. He is pushing as hard as he possibly can to try and close the deficit on the race leader Ian Mitchell, who, remember, started from pole position. So you could almost argue it was fortuitous that his car sort of dropped off the pace in the race earlier on today, because say he was second, which meant that he would have sort of lined up, in fifth position on the grid had he have stayed there. But because he dropped down through the order and finished in sixth, he picks up pole in this one. The car's fixed, and he's now looking to try and scoop up win number 2 of the weekend, win number 2 of the championship season. And considering that himself and Lewis Clark were at the sharp end of the championship, Lewis was leading the championship coming into this weekend. Ian Mitchell was second in the championship, some 9 points behind. It's still going to be close, I think, as we toss up the scores at the end of this weekend and look forward to heading towards Alton Park for 2 further races that take place over the course of Saturday, the 1st of July, which is the next time that we see the Focus Cup Championship out on circuit. So down the Bentley Straight, the clock has ticked to 0. Ian Mitchell leading the way. Lewis Clark in second position. Jonathan Baker still sitting there in third place, with Richard Avis queuing up behind. In fact, Richard Avis has made it through by the look of things, so Richard Avis is now up into third position, is he? Yeah, Jonathan Baker is down into fourth place, so it does look as though Richard Avis has made it stick. Second time this weekend we'll have seen him on the podium, because he finished in second place in one of yesterday's races. But for Ian Mitchell, it's been pretty much a lights to flag victory for him, because the Power Maxed car for the final time turns its way out of Murray's Corner, and he won the second of the 2 races yesterday. He's going to win the second of the 2 races today, which gives him 30 championship points to add to his tally, and he comes through to win round 8 of the 2023 Focus Cup Championship by, in the end, just 0.7 of a second from Lewis Clark, who finished in second place. Third place is going to be Richard Avis, comes through to finish in third place. Jonathan Baker will be through now to finish in fourth place. Simon Watts and Greg Saunders come through fifth and sixth. Mark McCann is already through in seventh place. It's going to be Simon Walton that comes through, the man behind the championship, that finishes in eighth place. Ian Graham, ninth in the end. He did all of that hard work to try and hold everybody up, but they ganged up on him and slowly picked their way through and passed. Claire Avis finishes in 10th place. Then we just need the arrival of Abby Walton and Sarah Hall for our final 2 finishers, because of course we lost Simon Wall with some damage following the contact down there at the Wilson hairpin, and we lost Andrew Weiss with some sort of issue very early on in the race. But Ian Mitchell, that is now 2 wins for him over the course of this season. He came into this weekend lying second in the championship standings from Lewis Clark. And whilst I haven't done the mathematics, I think he will still be second in the championship. And if anything, the gap might have actually grown very slightly because of the extra 30 championship points for pole position that Lewis Clark picked up, but it's not going to be a great deal. It's still going to be a tight run thing as we head towards Alton Park in Cheshire for the next couple of races. Abby Walton takes the checkered flag, and then there's just one more car that we need to usher over the start finish line, and that will be Sarah Hall, who will come through at the wheel of the Mintex liveried car to finish as the last of the finishers in 12th position. So yeah, Alton Park is the next one that we go to, and then after that they go to Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit. They've already raced on the Grand Prix circuit once this year, but they'll go back to Kent and Brands Hatch to race on the Indy circuit. And I think that's Ford Power Live where they do that, the event down there on the 16th and 17th of September, where they will have, again, very similar format to this weekend. They will have 4 races over the course of a weekend. Sarah Hall, I think, has gone missing in the final sector somewhere, because we still haven't seen her come through to take the checkered flag. So I'm not quite sure what has happened to her or whether the transponder didn't quite work. So we should be able to confirm the results for you then for our fourth race of the weekend for the Focus Cup round 8 of the championship. And the way that the results were is that Ian Mitchell claims the win, his second of the weekend, his second of the season, from Lewis Clark in second place and Richard Avis in a hard-fought third. Jonathan Baker was fourth, ahead of Simon Watts and Craig Saunders, who complete the top 6. Mark McCann, even delayed with the incident down at the Wilson Hairpin, came through to finish in 7th place with Simon Walton in 8th, and poor old Ian Graham, who was in second for so long, finishing in 9th in the end. Claire Avis comes through to complete the top 10. And just outside of the top 10, it is Abby Walton who's there in 11th place. We do have Sarah Hall now over the start-finish line to finish in 12th place. And then we had the two retirees, which was Simon Waugh and Andrew Weiss, with their respective problems down at the Wilson Hairpin. So that is it from us at Snetterton this weekend. Thanks for joining us for hopefully all 4 of the races that we had for the Focus Cup Championship. We will be back out next time out, Alton Park in Cheshire on the 1st of July. So until then, goodbye.